and temperatures that swing from baking heat to surprising chill. And yet, for centuries, camel caravans crossed this vast expanse, carrying not just salt and gold, but manuscripts, fragile and irreplaceable. You fall into step beside one of these caravans as it prepares to leave the city. The camels kneel patiently, their long lashes blinking against the sunlight, each one loaded with bundles wrapped in cloth and leather. There's a quiet efficiency here, no rushing, no shouting, just practiced movement. Everyone knows their role. Mainstream historians note that trans-Saharan trade routes connected West Africa to North Africa and beyond, linking cities like Timbuktu to places such as Cairo and Marrakesh. These weren't just trade routes, they were information highways, long before anyone thought to call them that. And today, you're about to follow one. You set off with the caravan, the city slowly shrinking behind you until it becomes a low, sandy blur. The ground underfoot shifts from packed earth to softer sand, and your pace adjusts whether you like it or not. Walking in the desert is a bit like trying to stroll across a giant, warm pillow that occasionally fights back. The camels, of course, handle it with effortless grace, which feels mildly unfair. Among the goods strapped to their backs are manuscripts, carefully wrapped, often layered in protective cloth, sometimes placed inside leather satchels. You might expect something more high-tech, but here simplicity is the strategy. Layers create insulation. Leather resists the worst of the dust. And everything is packed tightly to minimize movement. It's not perfect, but it works. You glance at one of the traders, who walks with a steady, unhurried rhythm. There's no sign of worry on his face, no constant checking of the bundles. This is routine. He's done this many times before. And here's a small but fascinating detail. Some traders memorized the contents of the manuscripts they carried, just in case something went wrong. Imagine casually strolling across the Sahara while mentally backing up an entire library. Your phone's cloud storage suddenly seems less impressive. As the hours pass, you begin to notice how carefully everything is timed. Travel happens in the cooler parts of the day, early morning, late afternoon, sometimes even at night. When the sun becomes too intense, the caravan pauses, seeking whatever shade can be found, even if it's just the narrow shadow cast by a dune. You stop with them now, settling into a patch of shade that feels like a small miracle. The temperature difference isn't dramatic, but it's enough. Enough to rest. Enough to protect. The manuscripts are checked briefly, not unwrapped, just adjusted. A shift here, a tightening there. It's all about maintaining balance, keeping the layers intact so the heat doesn't penetrate too deeply. And this is where the desert begins to reveal another quiet truth. Cooling out here isn't about making things cold. It's about slowing down how fast they heat up. The cloth wrappings trap a thin layer of air around the manuscripts, acting as a buffer against the external heat. The leather adds another layer of protection, reducing direct exposure to sunlight and dust. It's a kind of passive cooling system, no machines, no moving parts, just materials and understanding. Historians still argue whether these methods were consciously designed with thermal principles in mind or simply developed through generations of trial and error. Either way, the result is the same. The manuscripts survive journeys that seem, at first glance, completely unreasonable. You lean back slightly, watching the horizon shimmer in the distance. The desert plays tricks on your eyes, turning far-off dunes into wavering shapes that seem to float. It's beautiful, in a quiet, almost hypnotic way. Also mildly suspicious, like the landscape is trying to convince you it's friendlier than it actually is. A trader nearby unwraps a small bundle. Not a manuscript this time, but food. Simple, practical, easy to carry. He eats slowly, conserving energy, and you realize that everything here is about conservation. Movement, water, even thought. Nothing is wasted, and the manuscripts are part of that careful balance. They're not treated as delicate in the way you might expect. There's no dramatic fussing, no constant anxiety. Instead, there's a steady, practiced care, an understanding that comes from living in this environment day after day. A quirky tidbit. Some caravans were known to include specific camels trained to carry only the most valuable manuscripts, chosen for their calm temperament and steady gait. Basically, the ancient version of handle with care. Except your delivery driver is a camel who may or may not be judging you. As the sun begins to dip lower, the caravan stirs again. The heat softens slightly, the light turning warmer, more forgiving. You rise with the others, brushing sand from your clothes, and continue on. There's a rhythm to this journey now. Walk, rest, adjust, repeat. The manuscripts remain secure, their layers intact, their journey continuing step by step. And as you move through the vast openness of the Sahara, something becomes clear. The survival of these texts isn't just about protection. It's about harmony, about moving with the environment instead of against it, about understanding that in a place like this you don't control the conditions, you adapt to them. The city of Timbuktu may feel far away now, but its influence travels with you, wrapped in cloth and leather, carried across dunes by patient animals and even more patient people. And somewhere inside those bundles are ideas, mathematics, astronomy, poetry, waiting quietly, enduring the heat, the distance, the time. You glance once more at the caravan stretching ahead of you, each figure moving steadily through the golden light. No rush, no panic, just the slow, deliberate transport of knowledge across a desert that seems, somehow, to allow it. By the time you return to Timbuktu, the desert feels less like an enemy and more like a very demanding roommate. One that insists on dry air, intense sunlight, and absolutely no tolerance for laziness. And yet, as you step back into the city, you notice something you might have missed before. Nothing here announces itself loudly. There are no grand signs pointing to the great library of Timbuktu. No sweeping staircases or towering archives. Instead, knowledge lives quietly, behind walls, inside homes, woven into daily life so seamlessly that you could walk past it a dozen times without realizing what's inside. You pause outside a modest mud brick house. It looks much like the others. Smooth earthen walls, a simple wooden door, and a roofline that blends into the skyline like it's trying not to be noticed. If someone told you this place held centuries of scholarship, you might politely nod, and then assume they were exaggerating. But they wouldn't be. You duck inside, the doorway low enough that you instinctively bow your head. The shift in temperature is immediate. Not cold, of course, this is still the Sahara, but noticeably cooler, calmer. The thick walls have done their quiet work, absorbing heat slowly, keeping the interior stable. This is one of Timbuktu's libraries, except it's also someone's home. Mainstream historical understanding tells us that many manuscripts in Timbuktu were preserved in private family collections rather than centralized institutions. These were inherited, protected, and expanded over generations, often without any formal cataloging system. Imagine your family heirlooms, but instead of old photos and slightly questionable furniture, it's a collection of medieval scientific texts. You step further inside, your eyes adjusting